Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I decided to go through my ultimate board game backpack, or my travel bag, so to speak. Genuinely my travel bag. In fact, when you're watching this right now, I'm currently on vacation at the moment, and so I probably have some version of this with me, although I do mix it up and tweak it as well as things go. And this is, well, inspired by Quackalope, honestly. This whole entire video inspired by Quackalope because over on Board Game Tables, it's a Kickstarter, I'll link down below, they're running their newest bags and mats and all those things, and Quackalope did a video on how many games they could stuff into a board game backpack. And they got like 50 or something like that, and I decided that I'm not doing that, although inspired by them. Instead, I figured that I'm going to go with quality over quantity, something I've always believed, which would be a funnier rib if it weren't from someone who does like 12, 13 videos a week. But anyways, what I have over here is I have my ultimate board game backpack. I generally use the Board Game Tables bag. I've been using it for 3-4 years now since I got the first one, the first Kickstarter. This is what I use whenever I travel. And what I've put in here today are the types of games that I do travel with. Now, it's not going to be the exact same every single time. I do mix it up. But here's a good reference point or idea of what typically makes its way into my bag when I'm traveling for vacation, for family. I'll always tweak it up a bit. And I decided I'm going to go through this. This is what I actually put in my bag, or again, some variation thereof. Now, we're going to go ahead and open this up, and I'm going to go through all the games. This video is a combination of two things, effectively. One is showing you what I can stuff into here, effectively, and carry it around and all that, put it on my back, or just hold it by the straps. A few ways to go through it. And two is the actual types of games that I think are useful for traveling. So let's go ahead and start off. And we're going to start with the obvious one that fits in everything, which is a bunch of button shies. Now, these fit anywhere, no matter what, although these are the specific ones that I am picking out. I'm not going to heavily go into these today because I will actually be doing a dedicated video on all my button shy games and ranking, reviewing all those at some point. But for right now, I'll say Food Chain Island is one of the solo games I like to bring with me. Uz is Sprawlopolis, always a classic. And then we have Rove, which is also great. From there, I love Circle the Wagons and Skulls of Sedlic as little two-player experiences. Now, I will say, in general, when I travel, I probably only end up playing 2 of these, maybe, sometimes 3, sometimes even 1. And I don't think I ever play none of them. I usually do play one of them. But it's the variety. And the fact that these have such a small footprint means I could bring 5 of them without having to commit to playing any of them, or even playing one of them, and it was worth the space that they took up. The biggest problem with travel in general, the biggest problem with travel and board games, there are bigger problems with travel. The biggest problem with travel and board games is that aspect of you're dedicating space to travel. And that space could be a flight, it could be a car, it could be whatever you're doing. But it's precious space no matter what you do. And if you don't play those games, it feels like you dedicated that space for nothing. But these don't have that penalty. I could bring 5 of these, play one of them, and it was totally worth it. From there, we have Via Magica. Now, this is going to reflect my personal travel plans, which is most of the time, a vast majority of my travel is going to be visiting my family in Toronto, which means I have my nephews, my nieces, my kids have their cousins. And so bringing a few games that my kids know how to play without me being involved and that they all enjoy together, that's always a big part of what goes in here. There's going to be 2 or 3 games that fall into that category, so 2 or 3, it may actually be less. No, there's 2 or 3. There's 2 or 3 games that fall in the category of kid-friendly games that my kids can play with their friends or with their cousins and whatnot. And so Via Magica is one of those. This is going to be a reprint from Augustus. It has a bingo-esque mechanic, but it has vibrant colors, quick and easy play. It's one of the games I enjoy playing with my children. It's always fun. I'm never pulling this out at game night, to be completely frank. This is a very much a lighter experience that isn't as amazing as some experiences, but it is one that I very much enjoy. I'm happy to go into it, I'm happy to play with them, and most importantly, they don't even need me to be there. They can play it without me there. From there, let's go with something that is actually, this is the only Board Game Tables game that I've put in this bag, and I could have chosen a few, because one of the things Board Game Tables does is they put out board games. They also make board game tables, for the record. They started with tables. They went to board games next, I think, and then accessories. They have a whole bunch of stuff. They just started doing shelves now. But the only one that's making its way into my bag today is QE. Now, this reflects the ever-changing nature of the bag. I've traveled with most of the Board Game Tables games at one point or another. I find that many of them, not all of them, but many of them are accessible to being gateway friendly, which is often when I'm traveling, almost inherently, I am engaging with more people who don't play games as much as I do, and so gateway friendly is always a plus. A big part of this bag is going to be gateway friendly. So, to that end, we have QE as one of those options. QE is gateway friendly in the sense that you can play it with someone who's never played board games before, and they'll walk away either loving the concept of board games or hating them if you play QE. I've done different games from board game tables in the past when I travel. I've done on tour, I've done bites, I've done a variety of the games, the whole GPS, the Ahoy Mountain Goats, I've brought all those with me. Today I'm picking QE as my board game tables game of choice, not specifically because it's board game tables, but because I recently reviewed this on the channel. This is a messed up game that works phenomenally well, but it functions as both a strategy game and a party game, although possibly drifting more into party game territory. It's a game where you're basically bidding unlimited amounts of money, and the entire thing is broken every single time you play it, but everyone has fun. And that feels like the point of board games, right? Fun feels like the point of board games, at least to me. Next up, we have another recent addition, and this is where one of the things I try to bring with me is I try to bring board games, I try to bring kid-friendly games, accessible games, gateway games. I also try to bring some two-player games with me because it's always easier to, at some point or another, find a second player to play with. Whether it's my nephew, who's very good at games, whether it's my wife, who's very good at games, or whether it's any of my brothers who are very good at games. There's always going to be some opportunity to play a two-player game. Or this is a game I've even played with my daughter, and she has won me at it, which is problematic to say the least. Paris, la Cité de Lumière, which I'm probably saying horribly, but Paris, the City of Lights from Devere Games is again one of my recent newest discoveries. That's always part of the backpack. The newer stuff does tend to take a little preference. I found something new that I want to share with people, and so it does enter the backpack. But anyways, Paris City of Lights from Devere Games is one of my recent additions to the channel, just recent additions to my board game backpack. You can find a video on the channel recently covering a review of this game and its expansion, and going into just what this game does. It's basically polyomino placement, but it's very, very, very strategic. You take Patchwork, the idea of a two-player head-to-head polyomino game, and you escalate that in how mean and strategic it can be, and you have Paris. A lot going on here in a very small form factor, but plays in 30 minutes. Another factor of travel is often I have less time, so most of the time, longer games don't enter the backpack. Not as much, unless I have something planned, unless I've arranged it with my siblings that I'm going to be playing this game or that game when I get there. Generally shorter games. Also, just side point, I'm realizing as I talk through this that my shirt matches the backpack. That was not planned. That was pure luck and coincidence. Now, we go into a few party games. Now, I have Codenames and Just One as my current choices. These will always vary. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Sometimes it'll be Decrypto, sometimes it'll be Codenames, sometimes it'll be Just One, sometimes it'll be Codenames Duet. There's always some form of travel, of party game that can actually hit the backpack. And honestly, I'm probably overdoing it on this at this point. Between QE, between Code... Uh-oh, these are falling out. Uh-oh, do I have a problem in my hands? I have a problem in my hands as these fall out. This should not go on its side, apparently. Fortunately, it wasn't on its side in there. But anyways, Codenames and Just One and QE are all hitting the party game genre, which is possibly a little too much for this. It's unlikely I'm going to get all three of them played, but I'll get two of them played, and that'll be fun to go through. Just One is always a great party game, simple and quick to the point. Codenames escalates a bit with the level of strategy it's bringing to the table. It's still a party game, very much so, but it has a little more going on as far as the strategic nature of what you're doing and thinking it out. A little less chaos, still hilarity, but a little less chaos. And then we have QE, which I still don't know what QE is. It might be a party game. It might be a strategy game. No one really knows. People know. It's probably categorized somewhere, but that categorization I don't personally trust. From there we go to one of the bigger box games, and we have a few of these. We're going through everything here one at a time. We have Seven Wonders. Seven Wonders, which is a classic for me. Generally, I always bring one of... There's a few games I have that fit this category. Between Two Castle, Mad King Ludwig, Tiny Towns, Seven Wonders, Ethnos. There's always one game that I can find in my collection that both is gateway friendly, doesn't play in more than an hour generally, and it accommodates a wide variety of player counts. I find having that, this goes back to the aspect I talked about the nature of travel. The nature of travel is that I'm dedicating space to something, and so I want to increase the chances that it gets played. And something that plays in a relatively short frame, but accommodates a wide variety of player counts and a wide variety of skill levels, those things are more likely to get played because I don't actually know what's going to happen at a given point. I don't know who's showing up at what point or whatever. And so having a game where I can be like, oh, there's 5 of us. I didn't realize there were going to be 5 of us. I can still play Seven Wonders. Oh, there's 7 of us. I didn't realize I can still play Seven Wonders. You get the point. And so Seven Wonders is always a classic that hits that genre. This is a great game. Has always worked for us. We've always loved it. And it has stuck around for a very long time. This is the new edition. It's got expansions inside to mix it up. I can tweak those expansions depending on the players at the table, depending on the skill levels, depending on whether they've played Seven Wonders before. And again, there's always one of these. One of those things that I can bring with me, knowing that I don't know who's showing up, and so I have something prepped for those player accounts regardless of what happens. From there, we have 2 games that I find function very well on different skill levels. They are gateway friendly while having enough depth that people who are playing it on different levels can get a lot out of it. And again, that goes back to the general nature of this backpack, trying to double up on types. And Parks is going to be one of those games. Parks, I've always said, functions beautifully as a gateway game. It also functions beautifully as a cutthroat strategy game as you make your way along the trail trying to block others. And so the fact that Parks operates on multiple levels, not as much player count variability compared to Seven Wonders. I mean, you're going to play it as 2 to 4 players. I personally prefer it at 3 and 4, but 2 is still good. And usually 2, I'm going to be playing Paris today, honestly. Again, every trip's going to change, but Paris is going to be my go-to pick for 2 right now. At 3 and 4, I'll grab Parks. But it's 3 and 4 at different skill levels, which is one of the reasons it's in the backpack, because I can pull it out and experience it in different ways with different people. And it's incredibly cutthroat at some skill levels, and it's incredibly light and simple and just set collection at other skill levels. Both of them work phenomenally well. I prefer the cutthroat, but I don't mind tuning it back a bit to ensure that other people are at the table having a good time, enjoying what board games can bring. And again, usually when I travel, it's not going to be my game group, which means I have to be willing to tone it down a bit as far as what I'm doing and with who I'm doing it with. From there, similarly, we have Cascadia. Now, this in general, again, it's going to vary. One day one time it'll be Calico, one time it'll be Cascadia, another time it'll be Luna Capital, another Devere Games. Or in the future, when it delivers, we'll have Verdant, also from Flat Out Games. These are all games that give you a certain puzzle in terms of the way you're building out your own grid. They tend to not be that competitive in the sense that you're doing your own thing. The multiplayer solitaire with a degree of interaction in terms of taking the various tiles in the center, but you're doing your own thing. There's not as much interruptions, not much getting in the way of others. It's just about trying to build your own thing with the occasional moment of, oh, you took that bear I needed, and stuff like that, or oh, I needed that eagle, or whatever, some variation of terrain tile or animal that you are going for. So there is interaction, but not so in a way that's punishing or hurtful. It's a game that I can play with somebody who has played board games 2 or 3 times in their lives, and it's a game I can play with people who've been playing board games their entire life. It has that accessibility, it has that variableness, it has that adaptability to whatever the environment is throwing at me, and so I love Cascadia. Now, Cascadia is my favorite of all those 4 games I mentioned, but I like all of them, and I will mix it up. If I pulled Cascadia the last time I was at Toronto, I'll bring a different game entirely. I'll bring something else instead, because I want to mix up the experience. Unless, of course, someone asked for Cascadia, in which case, well, first of all, that means they have made good decisions, but second of all, I'll bring that with me. Now, we're down to 3 games left, because like I said, I didn't try to overstuff this. I tried going with what a typical board game experience will bring for me when I'm trying to travel. But next up, we'll have another kid-friendly one, and this is, again, recent highlights, but we have Core Quest. Core Quest is the newest edition in terms of games that my kids can play with their siblings, with their cousins, games my kids can play with their cousins, or games I'm happy to dive into and navigate with them. Core Quest is a game that's easy to get people up and running. My daughter, my 9-year-old daughter, can run this entire show herself. She can take the show, she can set it up, she can guide people along the way. Some of the other kids won't necessarily listen as much as they should. That's a different problem. She'll have to learn those skills about dealing with children on her own. Point is that Core Quest is just an excellent experience. It's one that's going to give you a degree of dungeon crawling that it works in a variety of levels. Now, again, like Via Magica, it's not one I'm pulling out at game night myself. It's a family-focused, kid-friendly game, but it's one that I'm happy to play. It's one that I enjoy. It's one that I'm not suffering through, and I'm only willing to suffer through games for my kids, not for my nieces and nephews. They have to play games that I actually enjoy playing along the way. And then lastly, we have 2 left. We're going to have another gateway-ish, gateway-friendly game, which is going to be Quacks of Quedlinburg. And again, like I said already, these always mix up a bit. Quacks of Quedlinburg is going to be one of my gateway-friendly experiences. One of those games that is a lot of fun to pull out myself, a lot of fun to play with others. It's got that degree of push your luck. It's got that degree of accessibility. It has that, because there's enough luck in the experience, it is not overly rewarding for skilled players. It's not overly punishing for new players. The luck kind of distributes a lot of things out, while still providing that degree of appeal of how to build your bag, of how to go for one thing or another. And then the bag will either work in your favor or it won't. It definitely has a lot of luck. But again, that is part of the charm. That is part of the accessibility to the experience. I have plenty of expansion content in here to mix it up. For those who've played the game, I have more stuff I can add in. For those who are new to the game, I'm just going to start you off on the base game. But it all fits into here, even with all the weight. This is a lot of weight. I didn't weigh the backpack. Probably should have weighed it. I have had to guesstimate. I would say this is probably around 35 pounds or so, maybe 30. It's hard to know for sure. Probably closer to 30. I'm probably over guessing. If I can pick it up one-handed without straining, probably under 30 actually. But anyways, last up on the list. Lastly, we have something that I bring for myself. Let's just show you it and walk through it. So, and again, we'll mix it up. One time it'll be Marvel Champions, but one time it'll be Spirit Island. Spirit Island is great for this backpack because of the fact that I can play Spirit Island in a variety of ways. Goes back to that aspect of variability. If I want something a little solo focused that I can dive into and I actually have an hour, which doesn't happen that often when I travel, but I might, and I do, and it has happened in the past, I might just have, a Saturday night where everyone is doing their own thing. I didn't make plans with other people, and so I'm left on my own, and I could watch something, read rules, whatever. By the way, I left out of here. There's always a stack of rule books in here too, just for myself. But anyways, I can pull Spirit Island out and play it solo. But if my wife wants to play something, we can also pull this out. If she wants something a little more than Paris or a little more than Cascadia, we can definitely pull out Spirit Island and get that played. And then if I want to play it with my siblings, my brothers, whatever it is, I can go all the way up. Well, technically, I can go up to 4 players. I don't like Spirit Island at 4 players personally. For me, 3 is the max that I appreciate it at. I'm willing to play it at 4 players while traveling if the right people there wanted to give it a try, so it technically has that option. But for me, 1, 2, or 3 players, and it gives me that heavier strategy game. But because I know that it's playable solo, it is a much higher chance of seeing this played than other heavier strategy games that I could bring with me. I could bring Brass Birmingham with me, but it's not going to get tabled, or almost certainly not going to get tabled, unless I dedicatedly planned for it. And again, if I make those plans, if I sit there and plan it with my brothers, we're playing this game, we're doing this, then it will show up in the backpack. That's true. But that is basically your board game backpack. We have all of that fitting into here. This does collapse nicely down, but I rarely bother. It usually just goes into our travel luggage area, or it's being filled up with board games as we prepare to travel. And that tends to be what I bring with me. Again, everything's going to vary depending on what I'm doing, what I'm going with. If I'm going on a family vacation with just my family, that will change because I know everyone's taste. And so I'll have my kids pick a few games. My wife will pick a few games. I'll pick a few games. If I'm traveling to other people, I take into account who I'm traveling to. Am I traveling to people who are gateway gamers, heavy strategy gamers, family, a mix of all? My goal in general is space is so precious when you're traveling, no matter how you're traveling. And so finding those games that are most likely to see play, at least for me, that's the important thing. So trying to hit those variableness aspects, trying to hit games that can accommodate different types of people, different play styles, those are the things I'm primarily trying to go for when I travel. And this right here is a very solid example of what would enter my backpack when I go a road traveling, when I go driving. There's no good way to end that sentence. In any case, I hope you found this fun. You could find this over on Board Game Tables. This is not a sponsored video or anything like that. I thought it was a good video idea over at Quacklope, and I just wanted to do my own little spin on it. So if you want to check this out, the Kickstarter should be active on Board Game Tables. If you want to find new board game table bag, this is the only game table bag I currently use. I have only tried 1 or 2, so don't take it as like a testimonial to all game table bags, all game bags, but this is one that I've been using for a long time, and I've been very happy with it, have had no issues with it. It is my go-to, and I probably need to pick up another one, because while I did go through this entire exercise with you, there are times where I've wanted a second bag, and I don't currently have one. So we'll have to make that work at some point. In any case, until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good one.